So, when I was 17, I fell in love. You don't hear many tech conferences starting with that line. This girl, she was, absolutely beautiful. Blonde hair, blue eyes, a lovely name, Faye. What a beautiful name. She sat just there, actually. And I was absolutely smitten when I met her. I was just, You know when you meet someone and you just, everything in your body just changes, like you chemically react to their presence. I was just crazy about her. And I had an opportunity to make a move. She invited me to her house for dinner as a friend. And I didn't know much about girls at that point, but I knew two very important things. First of all, I knew that if I was invited to dinner, I needed to make an impression. And second of all, I knew which topic of conversation to use to make an impression. You see, I'd read a few years earlier in a skateboarding magazine, because I used to do skateboarding, that chicks dig scars. And so over dinner, armed with this fantastic piece of knowledge, I began to talk her through all the various skateboarding scars I had on my body. And she was completely engrossed in that conversation, right? Right? Wrong. She was so bored. Her eyes had fallen to the floor in agony of boredom. She was bleeding with boredom. I got nowhere with the scars. Can you believe it? I wanted to write to the skateboarding magazine and say, false. Chicks do not dig scars. I want my money back. However, just as I was about to leave and call the whole thing a write-off and, have to try again with a different conversational tactic, I happened to mention that I really loved traveling and that I'd recently been to Africa and that I wanted to go to Italy one day, which in my mind is the best darn place in the world. Can I get an amen? The Italian declines to say amen. So, I happened to mention this. Mentioning Africa, all of a sudden her eyes lit up. Africa, you've been to Africa? Where in Africa did you go? Well, I went to Nigeria. And Nigeria, what's it like? Where did you go in Nigeria? I went to Lagos, it's the capital, and 100 million people live there or something. It's crazy, it's really, really busy. And we began talking about travel. And just as unengaged as she was talking about scars, to my bewilderment, she was so highly engaged talking about travel. That is how our relationship began. And that's a perfect description of the way that engagement works. This here is called the circle of engagement. And it explains the three processes, the three inexorable, inalienable, irrefutable, irreducible ways that engagement happens. The first thing that engagement begins with is a message. There is no other way that engagement can begin than with a message. Whether this is with a person, whether with a product, whether with an idea, it always begins with a message. You being here today is a result of a message being put out to you about Web Expo. You coming to this session is because there was a message put out about what this session would be about and where it was and what time it would be, and that a very handsome James Bond-like Englishman would be talking. And you all came to listen. I'm so grateful. He'll be out in a minute. The second thing of engagement is when somebody responds to the message. This is the second thing of engagement. Again, you cannot get away with it. If I keep on talking at you, you might recognize I'm putting a message across, but I can't get any further unless you respond to me. The second thing of engagement is a moment of response. I call this the gathering stage. And we can't get away from it. In fact, social science talks about this with what's called stimulus and response theory, right? Every stimulus gets a response, and that's how communication works. And many people are very good at that. All of us here today are gathering around a moment. We are in a moment of time. We have come together very specifically, very finitely in this moment right now at 2:03 on the 23rd of September. This is a moment that we have gathered. Of course, many people, they leave engagement right here. And it's sad because there is a third stage of engagement. And that's where you take what you've shared in a moment like this, in a moment where people have gathered, and you turn that into a lasting resource, something that enables and empowers and impacts and helps people so that you can build a new foundation and go on the circle again. As we can see up here, this circle is iterative. So after Faye and I had spoken about travel, we had such a great time that now there was something that was meaningful about that conversation that had contributed to our friendship and to our relationship. And because of that, next time we got together, I could begin talking about Italy. If I began talking about scars, I would have gone back to the beginning. But instead, I started talking about Italy, and we built on where we left off. All of our relationships and friendships go like this. The friends that we have the best relationships with are the ones that we've engaged with the most and had the most meaningful conversations over and over and over again. And it keeps on building this bigger and bigger circle of engagement. It's the same thing with the products that we use. Our products are ones where there was a message put out, we responded to that message, then the product gave us something meaningful, we had a meaningful interaction with it, and then they built on that and we built on that, and around and around and around and again we go. I was in a session earlier on with Saskia talking about MailChimp, right? MailChimp's a great example. When you send one campaign, you now build on that success. It's not like starting again. When most of the products that we have, once you've used it, you build on it. How many remember the days when you joined Facebook, like 10 years ago or something? And you join Facebook and you get a friend. And once you got a friend, it was like now you started again, but further on. There was more going on. Engagement had built, and so it was meaningful and valuable to you. Well, that's the way that's the process by which engagement works. And that's kind of cool. That's kind of a big deal. And my theory is that the way that we engage with people in this process is the same way that we engage with products, we engage with ideas, indeed, we engage with anything.